Welcome back to the Movie Well Marathon. And if we've timed this correctly,
Ooh.
Happy New Year-ish, roughly,
Right? Yeah,
kind of.
I think so.
I don't know how close
Happy New Year!
the first Monday is to the New Year, but Happy New Year. This is the first marathon of 2025, assuming we've done this right.
Ooh,
Every time we've tried to do this, it
we've
has
gotten it wrong.
it has been wrong. Some of you may remember the fiasco last October. But anyway, but anyway, anyway, yes, we are here doing Night at the Museum. We are very excited.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. A little less excited the longer we go, not for necessarily quality reasons, but it will get a little sad.
The
But
first one is like the
it is the
most
best one. It
classic.
just is.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I wanna say right off the bat, and then I wanna have your thoughts as always. This movie slash this trilogy is absolutely slept on. The people who like
Mhm,
it love it, but it is not talked
mhm.
about enough. How just brilliant this movie is, how fun this movie is, how clever, and how just magical. It's magical.
I think
It's authentically magical, and it's also like thoroughly good in that the Pharaoh's an Egyptian kid, Sacagawea is an
mhm.
indigenous kid, and Attila the Hun's an Asian guy. Like it's not as dumb as you'd expect necessarily from a movie starring Ben Stiller. And no necessary hate to Ben Stiller, but he's known for like Zoolander
Goofy, silly
and
things. Yeah.
Dodgeball and Alex the Lion. Like, but in this movie, he's like acting as a regular dude. Like it's
Hmm.
good. I like this movie a lot. It's slept on. It is
Yeah.
underappreciated. That's where I'll stop for a moment.
I think watching this movie for the first time is like a core memory for me.
Yeah.
Like it's because I just remember watching it and being I mean, I didn't even fully understand everything that was happening. I don't think I was particularly young. I just wasn't totally keeping up with everything because it was probably one of the more complex stories that I'd engaged with at that point in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Disney movies are very simple. They tell you what the motivations are. They tell you what they're doing as they're
Right.
doing it.
Right.
Very easy to understand. Um, Whereas this is a little bit more like it's clearly for kids, but it's a little bit more sophisticated. Characters are suggested that they should do something, and then the next thing you see is they're doing it, but you have to sort of like make that cognitive leap a little bit. Anyway, it's I remember finishing the movie and just sort of like sitting there and listening to like the credits play and just kind of being like, that was the most magical thing
Mm-hmm.
I've ever experienced. Like that was amazing because the idea that I'm a massive nerd, but the idea that I could go to a museum and
Uh-huh.
it would, like, come to life and I
Mm-hmm.
would, like, be able to learn history to interact with the things in the museum better, the fact that I would be, like, responsible for managing those things, the fact that, like, I could just
I
hang out with, like, an
know.
Egyptian pharaoh,
Ah,
I could be a
yes.
part of that world, like, that's was
Yes.
so cool. I
Mm-hmm.
always wanted that to be true. It's like right up there with like Finding Narnia. Like
Yep.
the
Yep.
idea that things would come to life and I would
Uh-huh.
just be a part of a museum like that was is amazing. I love
So
it.
good. Yeah. So we forgot. Just sorry, quickly. Directed by Sean
Ooh,
Levi came out.
Levy.
Levi. I don't know. Levy. I don't know. I'm dyslexic. Leave me alone. Directed by Sean, came out December 17, 2006. It is almost 20 years old. Crazy. But yes, no,
Oh.
everything you said just now, totally agree. I went into every museum after this imagining what it would be like if these things came to life.
Mhm.
I also I don't remember when I saw this. We were young when it came out. Like I
We
don't
were. I
but
was late.
yeah. So I don't know when this was, but I eventually got a chance to go to the Smithsonian. I think it was before the second one came out. So Battle of the
Me too.
Smithsonian hadn't happened yet. So, but I went to the Smithsonian after seeing that at the museum, and I was so excited, and it was such a letdown because the museum. Well, let me get there. The museum in Night at the Museum is so not just from the magic standpoint. It's just
Mhm.
so rich with culture and stuff.
Mhm.
They definitely stole so many things. But like, I mean, you got the main stuff. You got the statues of presidents and the dinosaurs and the explorers, the Huns, Sacagawea, the miniatures, and then in the Easter Island head, and then in the
Oh,
background you've got the Jade Lions and the Civil War dudes and the Terracotta Soldier, and then the Smithsonian, the main history one, not all the other museums. I know there's other museums. The Smithsonian is like an awesome room of dinosaurs, a room of rocks, and then a lot of dead animals. Like it's mostly
you went to
taxidermied,
the wrong Smithsonian,
I
man.
guess, or like maybe it was
Great
just
time.
I don't know. I didn't go to the aerospace part or the art part. Just it's like
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
natural history one. It's a lot of nature stuff. So it's like a lot of
Hmm.
animals and stuff like that. But I went in expecting dioramas of historical figures and
Mm.
artifacts. Like I think I was expecting like probably the British Museum, not this
Mm.
one section of the
That was cool
Smithsonian.
too.
Oh yeah, it's just the layout. I've always loved the layout of this museum with the expansiveness of the world that it includes, even though it's fictitious. And I think that's just a detail that I like for character design and for little mini adventures. The number of things he gets to deal with within this enclosed space, the dinosaur, the miniature battles, the animals, the weird faceless puppet creatures. Like he goes seamlessly
Hmm.
from weird adventure to weird adventure, and some of them are, like I said, in the same room. Beautiful,
Hmm.
amazing. And before we get too far away from it, I'm sorry, I have to say the opening of this movie, the opening credits. First of all, the score that we get introduced to, beautiful,
Yeah.
magical, perfect. But it also,
Makes me feel things every
yes,
time.
and with the when they play the drums, like oh, it's so good. But like the opening showing us all of the exhibits, introducing us to the things we're going to deal with and see
Yes.
later,
Actually,
brilliant, brilliant
that's
use of
something
opening
that we
credits.
need to mention because they keep that structure in the later films too. And they like allow the character to sort of interact with a lot of the exhibits before they come to life. And it's very basic
Yes,
storybuilding stuff. You
yes.
introduce the thing before it comes into play,
Uh
right?
huh.
But it's done so effectively in this because I think because that's what a museum is kind of like. Like you
Mm-hmm.
go and you see the things and you go, huh, that's cool. That's another cool thing. Moving on. And then later in the film, when it reaches like the magical stage of things, that all just comes to life and you remember all the stuff that you saw before. And you're like, all of this is currently
Mm-hmm.
either trying to kill me or kill something else right now. I'm dealing with a lot. And
Right.
it's kind of fantastic. I mean, I don't think the magic of these movies fades at all as you
Mm-mm.
get older, which is crazy because when I first went back to rewatch this film, not for this, because I watched this a
Oh
fair
yeah,
amount, probably
this
once a
was a
year
this
at
was a
least.
classic in my household. We could quote this one.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I when I first went back to watch it, probably middle school, I was like, this is probably not going to be as good as I remember, like I was probably looking at it with like amazing, very, impressionable kid
Mm-hmm.
eyes where I was like,
Mm-hmm.
this is so cool. And then I watched it and I was like, nope, this is
This
still
is this
awesome.
is
And
gold. This is ancient Egyptian gold.
the reason it's so good is because of the level of detail these guys
Yes.
go into in
Oh,
making this world so
absolutely.
rich. Like, they
Yes.
don't just put on some easy costumes and say, that's a Mongolian. They, like,
I know.
it's
There's so many background
accurate.
details. It's so good.
Yes, clearly whoever made these films genuinely loved museums and
Mm-hmm.
wanted to accurately reflect them in the film that they were telling because they do this thing where, like, and they make it a part of the character arcs for some of them, but the characters, the creatures who come to life during the museum, they know that they're representative of the historical figures that they're made to, like, represent, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
they're aware that they didn't actually have these experiences, and yet they fully embrace the role of those representatives. It's not like it's not like Jedediah has a little mini cell phone that he just pulls out of his pocket and he's like, "Yeah, I'm
Right,
dressed like
right,
a
yeah.
cowboy, but I'm a modern kid." It's like, like fully bought into the reality of the history that they're from, which
Mm-hmm.
is so fascinating and fun to play with, where, like, rather than them being actual people from those times that are like somehow shrunk down and cursed. It's like they're just representatives,
Mm-hmm.
but they're gonna do their job and be the
Mm-hmm.
best representative they can be of that culture and time, which then provides the film with all sorts of fun scenarios where you got a cowboy interacting with a Roman centurion, you've got
Yes.
like Civil War dudes who don't get to say anything because they're like
They're fascinating. They're
mannequins.
fascinating to
Like
me.
the whole, the animals act like animals, whereas the wax figures who are shaped like humans get to be human like. It's so interesting to see like the way that certain things get around limitations of their form.
Mm-hmm.
It's I mean, the level of detail in the film is astounding, not just in the film making techniques, because it still looks good,
Yeah, no,
but
it's a good movie.
it's
Structurally.
just like the history is more or less accurate. It's great.
Mhm.
It's
It's
so good.
also it is properly funny. It is a funny movie. Like starting from the bottom for the most part. I find the monkey stuff funny. The sequence of them slapping each other back and forth, and then we see Teddy's perspective. He's like, "Good Lord,
Yeah.
Lawrence, why are you slapping a monkey?" Like, I love it. I fucking love it. I snort every time I see it. But I like the more subtle ones where Larry's like, Theodore Roosevelt. He was our fourth president, right? 26. 26. Right, 26. Like,
Yeah.
just
Okay.
little silly stupid things like that are great. And I love the whole like, how could you speak English? I went to Cambridge University. You went to Cambridge? Like, it's just followed up by like a joke that's also clever. That fact that he was on display there, like, and that, so over time he
Mhm.
learned the language. Like, you know what? Yeah, I get it, but that's also hilarious. And then like when Jedediah and Octavius go to pop the tire, and it just goes back and forth between
Yeah.
real size perspective of
It's the
no
best bit
sound,
in the
no,
movie.
yeah, and then it goes back to them. It's like, save yourself, I quit
I
you. Yeah,
quit
it's so good. There's another joke though that upon a rewatch I actually found some mild issues with.
you. Mhm.
I
Okay.
know, I was a little upset. So one thing I did forget from the previous times watching this to now watch it critically, I thought Sacagawea had way more to do. And
Mm.
the joke, he, he went east but lost control and
Yeah.
crashed. It's like, wow, how do you know that? She just points like, that is properly funny. But the only thing that you brought this really cool character in to do, it's pointless if you had walked 4 feet to the right, dude. So I'm not trying to complain a whole lot. I'm not trying to shit on it. It's just I always felt like for some reason she was more involved, and I know that
That's the
our
significance of her character to Re-
Rebecca, like she's a
Rebecca.
very significant character to the overall vibe and the situation, the characters' conversations. But Sacagawea doesn't really get to do anything, which I do feel is a little unfortunate. Um, I was just when I was paying attention to it and the jokes and all that, it was pretty good. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm going on and on. So like, go give me more of your thoughts, because ugh.
Kind of related to the idea that they really buy into them being representatives. Every single character in this film is so earnest. Like
Yes,
they
yes, yes, yes.
like, Larry is kind of a screw up, but he's genuinely doing the best he can, and
Right,
he wants to do the best he can. His kid is not some rebellious kid who's like, "I hate you because of the divorce." It's just
right.
like,
He's just a
"Hey, we
kid.
have a
He's a little
strained
guy. Yeah.
relationship. Yeah, I need you to be reliable for me. I need you to be consistent for me, and you keep
Hmm.
disappointing me." Right? That's the source of their trouble there. The idea, like the relationship between Larry and Rebecca, or I did it
Hmm.
again, Rachel.
Rebecca.
Or it is Rebecca. Oh
Yes,
God. Okay.
you caught yourself and then did it wrong.
Okay. Whatever. Their relationship is based off of him like genuinely wanting to know more, and then her being like, "Oh, I can info dump to you. Okay, let's
Yeah,
do
do
this."
it,
And
girl.
like
Do
they,
it.
and then he like because he likes her, he's like, "I gotta tell you that this place is awesome." And she goes, "There is no way that's real. You're messing with me." And so it hurts because like
Hmm.
she's right. There's no way that's real. You're definitely messing with her. She probably has trauma from that in the
Yeah,
past.
maybe.
Um, and, and like he's just like, "No, no, I'm telling the truth." And that's like the conflict. It's pretty good. The only characters that are full on problematic and deceptive are our surprise
Twist
antagonists
villains. Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um and honestly, it's a pretty well set up twist where like they're up to something wrong about halfway through the film.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
honestly, you kind of get red flags the
Right
moment that
away.
like as an adult watching it right away because like he's the man is kind of like ominous, but then as a kid I explained that I was like, oh, they know the museum comes to life at night, so they had to choose their replacement carefully
You're right.
because
Yeah, it's a little ambiguous. It's a
right.
little ambiguous. Yeah.
And but what kind of my first like red flag that wouldn't go away was when he called for help and he was at the party and like
Hmm.
obviously knew what was happening and didn't care enough to genuinely help.
Right.
And
I think
I
that
just went, that's a problem.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit. That's the one honest to God suspension of disbelief beyond the magic. That is, they knew that he wasn't gonna die because in any other situation, yeah, they probably die. But at the same time, even if you want to say it's weird that he wouldn't help and he wouldn't listen, he knew Rexy wasn't gonna hurt him. At this point, 50 years in, Rexy wasn't gonna do anything to him. That's not what they do. That'd be weird at that point to think Rexy was gonna hurt them.
But there were real threats in the museum that he was not
That's
very concerned about
that's
warning
true.
them about.
Yeah, there
Like,
is.
Rexy we knew wasn't going to harm him because Rexy has that charm.
Right.
But the lions, they say in the directions, they will eat
That's
you.
true. That's true. That is something I have been fixated on as well my entire life. I want to know what the rest of the instructions were.
I know,
I
me
want
too.
to
We only
know.
get like 4 of
I
them.
know. That's actually kind of a joke in the movie. Is Larry makes fun of Gus for counting, and Larry says 4, like it's easy. He never makes it to 4. He doesn't even make it to the 4th one on the
I didn't even think
instructions.
about that.
Um, but I've always wanted to know what the other ones were because we don't end up doing anything else that like would implicitly or explicitly be something to do every night. Like
Hmm.
if there is something regarding the Civil War dudes, what would it be? Like, and if there's something about the mammoth or about the jade lion or so, I don't. There's so much more. I would love to know.
Well, and I
Um,
get the sense that there's also a sort of like when Larry takes over, there's a change in philosophy about how the night guard runs the place. The original guys, I get the sense, like Cecil and the gang, they locked everything down and that was their way of controlling things, whereas Larry built relationships with all of the exhibits for the most
mhm.
part. There were a few that obviously turned out to be pretty inaccessible, but he like I think kind of established, especially in the scenes with Jedediah, he's like, dude, I want to let you walk around
Yeah,
and wander
you're gonna let
around.
us roam free.
Yeah, I wanna do that. You just have to behave yourself so that
Uh,
it's not an issue. And, like, that I think was establishing that Larry is taking a healthier approach
mhm.
to managing what happens at night at the museum, than Cecil and his crew did.
Yeah, I think that is an interesting, just mild note to make that Teddy doesn't question where the other guys are. You know, like whether
Mm,
or not, because like definitely not all of them are locked up completely. You know,
mhm,
like some of them do get to wander around, and if you worked there for that many years, you had to have had some sort of rapport with some of them. At the very
mm,
least, Teddy. But no one
mhm.
questions, no one even references that there have been other night guards, except for Jedediah and Octavius, and that one guy with the hat in Jedediah's land saying that year after year, one of you guards locks us up in these boxes. No one else references that there have been guards. It's kind of interesting that it's like a total void of their involvement.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I wanted to mention just before we get too far away from it again your point about the characters being very earnest. The stepdad, Ant-Man, he's a good guy in this too. Even though he's awkward and
Yeah,
weird in the first interaction, when he brings Nikki to the museum, that is such a genuine interaction. That like clearly the way they frame that, the way he talks, he's not there to like shame Larry. He's not there to make him feel weird. That's a genuine like I am a part of an existing equation and I'm going to be a part of it in a positive way. So let's go check out what your dad's doing. Like that's you don't get that from a lot of movies. You don't get that
I know.
done well in a lot of movies. So like it's just cool that they even bothered to include that. And I like it.
The choice to not drum up interpersonal drama by unnecessarily villainizing family members, even in like a broken family situation, is a great choice for this film because
Mm-hmm.
that allows you to focus entirely on Larry's character development, just his like, he has to take responsibility, he has to learn how to adapt to his situation, he has to, take his moment of greatness. And I think that's what, moving on from just like first time I saw it, little kid, amazed by everything, easily best movie ever. A little bit older, watched it. This attention to detail is crazy. The movie is still really good. I'm still very engaged, enjoying it. Watching it now as an adult, like I almost cry in this film
Yeah.
several times because of the
Uh-huh.
character arc that Larry is going through. He's like,
Uh-huh.
he feels lost in the world. He's genuinely trying. He's got people he cares about that he's trying to, be there for and supporting. He feels lost and doesn't really know who he is. He doesn't know how he's supposed to rise to the challenge, and yet he's got to figure it out. Like the choice to, it's basically a coming of age story,
Mm-hmm.
but for a full-grown adult,
Yeah.
and that's such an interesting choice for what is essentially a kid's film.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's the adult growing up in the film, but it works so
It
well. It's
does.
such a good
It
choice.
really, really does. We could go on and on about the positives. I want to talk just a couple specific ones just for a second. Um, I really enjoy the second night sequence of him trying to be clever and coming up with things to deal with the
Mhm.
different historical creatures. Like all of that's really great.
Using all the research he did.
Yes, I like that a lot. I do like how we see him reading about the stagecoach and the money carrying horses. Like
Mhm.
it would make sense for him to know that in the end to just reference that he brushed up on his history, but that just that computer screen there. You don't think
Mhm.
about that. You don't think that's foreshadowing. You don't think that's Chekhov's horse, but it's there and it's brilliant. Love all that. Um, sorry, I'm trying to remember the good things. Oh, cast. Already mentioned it kind of offhand all over the place, just acting, writing, but the cast is great. It's
Cast
crazy
is
to see Dick
fantastic.
Van Dyke in this. He looks like he's
Oh, I know.
95 and this movie's almost 20 years old. Because also little fun not Easter egg, but side note I guess. That one scene after they reveal they're the bad guys and they turn the tablet on and they run up the stairs. We see that from the back, right? Because the other two, it's stunt doubles for them because like a bunch of old men can't run up the stairs like that. That's actually Dick Van Dyke. He's the only one who didn't need a stunt double. He just ran up the stairs like that. Insane. That man is never gonna die. Um, it'd be really
You say
awkward.
that.
Yeah, it'd be really awkward if he dies before this movie comes or before this episode comes out. So we might have to
Yeah,
amend
we
that
got a
later.
couple of months here,
We
man.
do. We
Like,
do have a couple of months. But anyway, love all that. He's great. He's great as a both a protagonist and a mentor and an antagonist. I think he does really well as both. It's kind of confusing to be honest. Um, Ricky Gervais.
well, he's not the best mentor. He should have been
True.
around
True.
for
True.
the
True. True.
fight.
Good point.
He
Good
was a
point.
good,
Good point. That's a good
yeah.
point. Ricky Gervais is Dr. McPhee. Fantastic.
Such a random character
I
to like
know.
throw in there.
I
He
know.
doesn't really come into play that much, but like to just make that character that kind of joke, like that
Yeah.
kind of strong character choice,
Yeah.
you never know what he's saying,
Oh,
and no one
the
knows what he's saying.
right. The bloopers are fantastic for this movie because like Ricky Gervais is such a crack up. He cannot keep a straight face. So for movies like this, especially where he's playing such an idiot, he can't keep it together. But I have found his intro scene where he's yelling at the children who are around the T-Rex. When I was a kid, I was like, mean man. Now I'm like, get it, Ricky, because fuck them kids. It doesn't help that I now work in a museum and like I totally relate to it a little bit more, but also
Hadn't
like
even thought about
also
that.
fuck them kids. Get off the dinosaur. Leave it alone. Um, if you don't mind, unless you have something real quick or just in general you'd like to add, I have a couple of nitpicks I'd like to throw out there that don't hurt the movie, but it's what we do here.
Yes, go for it.
Nitpicks. You walk into this museum. First thing you see, beautiful
Mhm.
Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton. There's not a dinosaur exhibit at this museum. That's a little misleading. I would feel gypped, to be totally honest with you. Uh,
This is where we're starting. This is like the
it's a nitpick. I said it. I said it was a nitpick. I said it was a nitpick. But you got to be real with me. If you walked into a museum of natural history and it had one dinosaur skeleton, would you not anticipate there to be a dinosaur exhibit in a museum?
Probably
There's
would,
not.
yeah.
There's nothing else. You know, I'm a nitpick.
Also, random note here, and it's just my memory being faulty, but I could have sworn that Rexy was a girl. Nope, they use
I
boys.
that might be
He,
that might be
all that.
bleed over from Jurassic Park because they also refer
Maybe.
to that Rex as Rexy, and that is a girl because the larger Tyrannosaurus Rexes, the bigger, cooler ones, they are girls. Um, Other little nitpick. I don't necessarily. If you want to get like really into it, it's almost problematic. Again, it's not that kind of movie, but it's weird that the ancient Mayans or the Aztecs can't
I
speak
noticed that
English
too.
and are kind of considered more barbaric. But the
Yeah.
Romans, they speak perfect English, and there's no issue with them at all. Now, again, not that kind of movie, but come on now.
Actually, the
Um,
Romans are a general exception because Christopher Columbus speaks Italian.
he does.
And
The Huns speak Hun gibberish. It is not a real language. I looked it up.
I didn't think it was.
It's gibberish. But apparently there is
um,
like the Vikings have one line and it is real Icelandic. So it's
oh,
weirdly
cool.
nitpicky with what they wanted to include. But yeah, the
I
Romans
wonder if it
they
was maybe just the actors going with the Hun thing, because like a lot of that is very clearly them just saying some
yeah,
nonsense and making it look like it's a language.
it's gibberish. But going back to the jokes as well, I love when he's hugging Attila and he looks at the other Hun and he's like, "You're next." It's so good. It's so good. Um, but yeah, so I'm sorry. Just I don't know. There's so many things. It's a little weird that the
Mhm.
Aztecs are like these crazy weirdos who are actively building a fucking pyramid. Like they aren't like living in
Mhm.
huts. And the Romans though, they are totally fine British accent, perfect little turds. I had another one, like just something along these same lines. Oh, we have rapport with dinosaur. It responds to commands,
Mhm.
but the lions don't. The animal interactions we have in this museum that border on supernatural are limited to the moose, the mammoth, the T-Rex skeleton, which being technical, there's no organic anything there anymore. It's all rock, and the monkey. But the ostrich, the elephant, the lions, all the other ones, they're just wild animals that are gonna eat you. So nitpick, nitpick, but still. Um,
I'm not bothered by the inconsistency because I think again it's an example of like how the representativeness of the museum kind of like comes into play here. We don't really know how a dinosaur acted. So there's great.
oh, come on.
We know how lions act. We know how
All
ostriches
right.
act.
All right. All right. Fine. Fine.
I'll give you the moose.
Fine. Um I don't really think this is a nitpick. I sometimes I do wish we got like from the sequels we spend time with other characters, which is great. We expand on this idea, but like there's so many cool things that were in this museum that I'd honestly love to see more of. Like I keep saying, the Jade Lion, the Terracotta Soldier, the Vikings. Like there's cool shit here to explore. Um, let's see. I mean, do I have anything else right off the top of my head? I mean, there's other things to talk about, but I'm going to try to stay with some sort of structure. Uh, no, I think that's good for right
I
now.
think of a flaw. The only flaw I can really think of is that Jedediah and Octavius's like resurrection is maybe a little bit rushed.
How do they get back? That's like
Yeah, they really shouldn't have
multiple
been able to.
days of walking for them. That's crazy. Um,
Yeah.
but no, I like their little emotional arc that they go through and how they become buddies. That's all fun.
Hmm.
Jedediah.
They're one of the most random duos, but they are kind of a cultural touchstone. Do you know how many Halloween costume duos
I
I've
do
seen in
not, but
Philadelphia?
I love that idea. Can you imagine having like twin
It
little boys and making them taking some Jedediah? That's so good.
actually, I'll be honest, I've seen it mostly on like female
Adult.
BFFs.
Oh,
Like
really?
it's
Okay, okay.
yeah, it's like people our age or maybe a little bit younger
Mhm.
who and mostly girls who dress up in like a vague cowboy outfit with a
That's
blue shirt and
fantastic.
like Roman
I,
centurion get
I
up.
I approve.
Like,
Fully approve.
it's great. It's great.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my last little nitpick. The weird hinges on Akman Ra's tomb, like the sliding
Mm.
latch. That's not. That's not an Egyptian
Not
thing.
ancient Egyptian.
But yeah, whatever. Whatever. Those are the nitpicks. In general, of course, I love this movie. Love all the things in it. As far as like real flaws, like you said, I I can't really think of one either. It has enough magic in it that when
Mhm.
there's like a well, how does this work? It's like, well, it's magic. Like, just kind
The
of
yada yada the right amount of stuff
they
at
really
the
did.
right kind of way. Yeah.
I do, and we get more confirmation on it later. But there is, I think, fair questions to ask as to does Dr. McPhee know? If he does,
Mhm.
why doesn't he act on it? If he doesn't, how the fuck does he not know? Is there
Mhm.
janitorial staff that knows about this?
Mhm.
If not, how? Um, do the rules apply only to sunrise and sunset? Looks like it does. So that sucks in the wintertime. That's kind of like when this movie takes place. But the sun sets around
We have
six
to close
o'clock.
early.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
mean, there's gonna be some days where you guys are gonna have to clear out of there pretty fast. Um, and then my only other kind of like around the lines of like nitpick, but also genuine question, especially in the early days when this started. And again, we get a little more info on this in the coming movies. How do you first night everything comes to life? How do you get them all back? Like
Mhm.
it's weird to think that Attila the Hun is so much of a monster that he runs around terrorizing Larry, but no one else in the museum. And despite that, he will go and stand where he's supposed to stand, at the end. It's weird that he does that, and Rexy does that, and the Jade Lion does that, but the cavemen don't. The
Mhm.
cavemen are like I get where we're going for here, but you are showing us inanimate object characters that have acquired more intelligence. I wanted your opinion on this. This is like connected and not
I
connected. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, as a kid, I always rationalized that some of them, again, based off what they're representing, some of the museum inhabitants seem to have higher intelligence levels than others. And those with higher intelligence levels are aware that they need to be back where they were so that they don't get caught and so they
Mm-hmm.
can continue coming to life at night. The cavemen would not be fully aware. Then the big question mark area is all of the animals
Yeah.
because they are not shown to have any real level of intelligence. Why
Right.
do they return to the exact same poses every night?
Right. Yeah. I mean, just a little. And
Mhm.
what I wanted to ask on top of that is I don't know the one caveman that escapes. In general, that is a fantastic sequence. Thrilling, terrifying. The music is great. It shows how Larry does actually care. It shows us the real stakes. Um,
Mhm.
but I wonder, is that the perfect character to have that happen to? Or could that be improved? Because on one hand, to have it be a caveman, it makes sense. They don't get it, they don't listen, they don't understand, but it's still sad because part of it is that they don't understand. But it shows us what will happen. Or should it have been a character that we like knew?
Mhm.
Should they have added just a little bit more, not a lot, just a little, to write a believable situation as to why a character that had some what did it say? Authority. Is that the right word? Independence, authority in themselves, left the museum, misjudged the
Agency?
time, and agency. I think that's the word. Yeah. And then Larry realizes before they do, and we see them turn to dust? Would it have more weight, or is it just the right amount of weight? Would it have been too much if it was a character that we knew?
It I'll be honest, that scene in particular, it is a good sequence for all the reasons that you listed, but it has always bothered me to some degree. And I've never really been sure why. I know that I dislike the idea that he failed. Like, because I even when I was younger, I aligned myself with Larry. I was relating to that character. And the idea that, he's trying really hard. He's doing his best.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes a mistake. The monkey opens a window, capuchin. And then, he loses something that was arguably innocent, had no idea that it was getting itself into trouble. And I can't decide, looking at that moment now with this question in mind, like, should it have been somebody else? I can't decide if it's worse because it's someone who
Mm-hmm.
didn't know, or if it's better that it's someone who didn't know. Because
Mm-hmm.
the fact that it's someone who didn't know better emphasizes the fact that we do need someone to essentially babysit these guys, because they are going to get themselves in danger if Larry's not there, or if someone's not
Right.
there to protect them and keep them organized. But the characters that do have intelligence and agency also seem to need him as much as the
Mm-hmm.
characters who are not aware, because they're getting so wrapped up in their petty conflicts, like, throughout the entire story. The characters who are intelligent enough, that are essentially human or fully sentient, they still need Larry's leadership in the film, because they are so wrapped up in whatever they're doing. Like, the Huns are running around terrorizing
Mm-hmm.
everybody. The Cowboys and the Romans can't get along. Like, they are clearly shown to need his help too. So would it have been more impactful to show a character with agency getting stuck out there? Because again, that's the stakes. It's not just the creatures that don't know better. It's the creatures that do know better don't have the management, like the
Mm-hmm.
self-management, to not be outside and getting themselves in
Right.
danger. So I don't know. There's a possibility there where we have a different version with a character that is more sentient. I just don't know who you would pick.
My first thought was like one of the Civil War dudes, and so like
Mm,
I was kind of thinking about while you were talking, and you bring up a point that adds like a new nitpick for me, in that the characters that have that wherewithal and that agency know better, and they don't leave the museum. So why do so many of them leave? Because when the chaos erupts, and the night watchman leaves and all that, and the dock doors are open, it's the mammoth and the monkey and the zebra and the ostrich, whatever, the animals leave, fine.
mhm.
But then when Achman Ra and Larry are going through the list of people that the tablet has brought back to the museum, it's like two knights and the Vikings and the alpaca ladies and the terracotta soldier. And I've never thought about it until just now. It's like, what the fuck were you guys doing? Why did you leave? Why
Yeah,
did
it's
you
dead right in
leave?
the title.
Like that's insane. And now I'm thinking again, if I were to twist something just a little bit, it'd be kind of cool to see the chaos of the museum erupting more so, and Larry not being able to stop all of it, so that the fight between the Civil War dudes starts to lead outside, and they just keep
Mm,
fighting like out into a park. So like I really do like that little moment where it's like, you guys gotta stop fighting. North wins. Sorry. Now go work with Christopher Columbus to find one of the guards. Like, that's great because it's characters, quote unquote, that we've seen from the beginning of the movie, all coming together in the end. I know what they're doing, but
mhm.
they have already been shown to be almost this weird little historic force of nature that easily could have been a believable thing that would lead outside of the museum. They're so caught up in their conflict, they don't realize what they're doing, and the tablet has to call them back. You could say the same thing for a weird fight between the Vikings and the Knights. Like, if you wanted to have reasons for all these guys to be out there, do something like that, because otherwise it's just, well, the ladies with the llamas just wanted to go on a walk in the middle of the night, in the snow, in the death world. Like, why? Come on now.
There is some possibility that, like, word got around that the tablet was stolen,
Oh,
and
possible.
they
That's a good point.
had their last night, so maybe they wanted to go see what the outside world was like
Okay.
because
I
they knew they
no,
weren't waking up again.
maybe
But
that's
that's
fair.
the only thing I can think of.
I do think that's a bit of a stretch, but I also think that's entirely possible. So fair. I
It's
think.
definitely a stretch because they spend no time really showing that. It's just that the museum's like conflicts and chaos increases kind of on
Mhm.
its own schedule, regardless of what's happening with like the villain storyline.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not been managed, so it keeps getting worse.
Right. It would be kind of cool if they included a sequence where, as the old Night Watchmen were out and about before Larry got everyone together, they were opening windows and doors, and so there's like, I don't know,
Mhm.
show the Jade
Chaos.
Lion seeing another cat, and so it jumps out to go play with the cat. Show, I don't know, name a historic thing. Maybe the knights see a bus and they think it's a dragon or something, like things that they wouldn't see because you always close the windows, you close the doors. Reasons for them to be out. That's all.
Yeah, that'd be
Again,
good.
nitpick, but I think that's a fair thing to bring up. Um, Going back to positives, the makeup for Christopher Columbus. Ugh, is it Christopher Columbus? Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yes.
The joke throughout the movie that he can't remember his name is because the producer Chris Columbus is on this, and they wanted to have some fun with it.
I
So
noticed it in the credits. I
yeah,
was like, that's a strange coincidence.
yeah. But makeup wise, great. We recently, time wise, now our time, we just had Christopher Columbus Day. Historically, piece of shit. But
Mhm.
makeup wise in this movie, beautiful. I love that his map is also like metal. Like they made
Yeah.
it like bendy and rubbery, so because it looks like it's part of his statue. It's also fun. It's like a blink and you'll miss it little moment when Rexy chases the little Humvee with the bone and goes around the corner. Columbus, without looking up, steps off his pedestal at the last second before Rexy's tail would have decapitated him, which is just so
Yeah.
fun. The ordered chaos of this museum. I've been ranting a lot, though. I want to hear more about either your positives or your negatives.
No, I think that is one of the strengths of this film is they do such a good job at crafting the magic. And we've already talked about the research they've done and the acting and like the way that the story is earnest, the characters are earnest, right? And that takes it a long way. But like the ability, like the blocking in this film, the blocking being a term for like how you position and move characters in a scene. It's amazing because you are able to really feel like you are in the scene. It's not just Larry in a hallway dealing with his current moment. There is always something that's
Mm-hmm.
richly decorated and costumed walking around behind you, fully invested in what they are doing at the moment. Like there's never just like there's this one moment, and Guardians of the Galaxy is a fantastic film, but there's this one moment in the first Guardians of the Galaxy film that is like the worst example of how to use extras ever. It's when they're fighting, and it's just like they're in this fight, Rocket and Groot are throwing people around. There are guns going off, and rather than fleeing the scene, all the extras are just kind of like awkwardly standing there because they have to be there for
Mm-hmm.
the scene. Like that's what they've been directed to do. In this film, you don't really get that. You have like every single, and there's so many of them. The ensemble cast is so big, but every single character or museum inhabitant or creature is in the middle of their own world. They build like a mentality and a character for each of the different things. Like you see the ladies of the llamas gossiping multiple times throughout the
Mm-hmm.
film. You see
Mm-hmm.
the jade lions walking around together. You see Christopher Columbus sort of navigating the world with comfortable ease, but he's got a language barrier, and so he can't really be the mentor like Teddy can. You have all this stuff like Rexy's constantly in the background doing dog like T-Rex things. It's the consistency of the chaos and the richness of the environment is such a key element to creating how wonderful the film feels, how magical the film
Mm-hmm.
feels. And it's something that easily could have been overlooked or cut for
Oh
the sake
yeah.
of like budget or something like that. But because it's there, the film is great. It's so good. I love it.
Me too. Just I agree. I
Oh,
agree with all of it. That's what I said at the beginning. That this movie is slept on. It absolutely is. This
mhm.
it's fantastic first of this trilogy. I don't want to even allude too much to the other ones, but like the ideas they explore, coming up, like it's so cool, and I wish it got more attention. Like this is so good.
I feel like this should be a staple childhood film. Like there's
Absolutely.
like everyone should watch this. It's hard to. I think the reason it's not as more popular or not talked about in the same way that some like Disney or Pixar classics are talked about is because one, it's like a movie fully designed for kids that's live action.
Mm.
And you don't get a lot of that these days.
Mm-mm.
It's also a really, really high quality film. So people are like, I don't know, people maybe don't think about it in the same vein as some of like the more simple like kids films.
Yeah.
Like people have an inherent negative bias when they say kids films because
Mm-hmm.
they assume that a kids film is going to be cheaper and like more flimsily written because kids don't notice that stuff, right? And Night Museum is not that at all. It's very rich and developed. I also think that it's got a pretty good response. I don't know what like its box office numbers were or anything, but it's not like it failed at the box office. It
Yeah.
just didn't explode. And I wonder if maybe the marketing wasn't as clear as all that. Plus, it's called Night at the Museum. People probably saw the word museum and assumed it was going to be boring, which
Oh,
would have been a
maybe.
huge mistake on their part.
See, I
But
don't know. It might be interesting to look at this like later on. Well, I mean,
Mhm.
I could look at it anywhere. There's like no spoilers. I've seen them all, but like it did well enough that I got a sequel and another sequel. I feel
Mhm.
like I'm just assuming. I've not looked it up. I'm assuming critically it would do well, and that's why I'm a little disappointed with the trajectory it goes because it does continue to go downward. I I
Mhm.
don't I don't feel there is an absence in this movie. I do not watch this movie and think this needs a more comedic character, and each one adds more of those to its detriment, I think. And
Yeah, I can see that.
it's really really unfortunate and really really unnecessary because the third one, without getting into it too much, the third one has like the most dramatic and heart-wrenching scene at the same time as like one of the dumbest, most slapsticky scenes. So
The balance between character development and richness of world versus humor is off in the next two. It's
yeah,
not as bad in the second one, I
no,
don't think. And
this
we're gonna
yeah,
talk about that when we get here. But
right,
the
right, right, right,
third one, I
right.
feel like, is the one that's the most unbalanced
Yeah,
between them.
and I've only seen the third one once all the way through, so it'll be kind of cool to take a look at it now and to look at it critically again. The second one though, I saw in theaters when I was a kid. I like it a lot. I think it has enough wonder. It's definitely not as good as the first one, but it maintains, I think, a certain amount of the wonder and the fun and the exploration of new stuff that it stands on its own. It's a fun sequel. The third one gets a little bit weird.
It's been a
And
long time since I've seen the third one because I remember not being overly impressed by it. So I
yeah,
am also looking forward to watching it with fresh eyes. So you
yeah.
kind of like looking
There
at it critically.
yeah, there are three big things of the third one though that I find very unfortunate. Um that's yeah, but we'll get to it later.
We can talk about that when we get
Later.
there.
Yeah,
It might be
later.
worth mentioning, I did look up on Rotten Tomatoes the score. Critics give it like a 42%.
Bullshit.
Yeah,
What?
this is just the
What?
first one.
Are
And
we
audience numbers are 67.
what? Are we off? Are we off our game? Did we not understand why this movie is
No,
bad? Because this movie is wonderful.
I I legitimately do not think this movie could be bad. There's no way this is lower than 4 stars.
No, like if I had
To
to
me, it's
grade
a
it,
5-star, but
if I had to grade it, and if I was the meanest I could be, it's an 85. Like out of 100. Like the
right.
meanest I could be,
Mhm.
85. How does so many critics walk away and say that's rotten? Like that's
I don't
so
know.
bizarre. What am I missing? Am I missing something? Like it's not serious enough that you have to take the magic that serious, but it's not so slapstick silly that you don't take it seriously at all.
There are people criticizing the pacing. There are
Pacing.
people criticizing the fact that it's not funny enough.
Bullshit. Bullshit, sir. That's bullshit. I can see where the pacing might feel a little bit fast. He moves from situation to situation very quickly, but I think that adds to the chaos and the feeling of being overwhelmed at the new job.
There's a person here complaining that it's not educational enough.
Why would you think that it would be? That's on you, sir. That's stupid.
Okay, the first audience review is peak kids movie. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Yes! Thank you!
Get it, Rowan!
Thank you! That's it, right there. It's not educational enough. It was never advertised as such. You've got Robin Williams playing Teddy Roosevelt. What did you expect?
This is not a Ben Stiller comedy. Like, this is not a PBS kids show, right? This is a solid narrative film that takes place in a museum that is magically brought to life. If you don't enjoy that premise and then appreciate the legitimate, like, heartfelt script that this movie then provides in that premise, I don't know what I could say for you. You must be a heartless person. Like, you gotta try it again. Like, it's terrible. Can
you imagine taking the time for the mild minor roles that your diverse cast actually has in the movie? Can you imagine taking the time to actually hire those actors, and then for someone to be like, it's not educational enough? It's like, what do you want? That's not what we were trying to do. What?
And even if they were trying to do, I did learn from this film. I
do feel like you learned stuff. I always remember the code word. I hope that's real.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like,
it inspired me as a kid to get more into history, and I was already pretty into history.
Me too. If you were to ask me, trivia-wise, what number president Theodore Roosevelt is, the only reason I know is because of this movie. So, not educational enough? Bullshit, I say, sir.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane. God, what a bunch of cold, soulless, lifeless. They need the tablet of Akhman Ra to wake up their dead, cold hearts, because this movie is fun and magical and beautiful, and y'all a bunch of whiny bitches.
It is honestly shocking that the score is that low.
I never would have guessed that. I really wouldn't have. I honestly wouldn't have. I cannot wrap my head around that.
I am okay if maybe we're a little bit harsher on the sequels, but like, this movie is genuinely amazing.
Good. It's so good.
Well, I guess
on that note,
people don't deserve it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Nobody deserves it.
Yeah. Any other closing thoughts on this movie that is definitely not a 42%?
I love this film. I've already said that several times, but if we're gonna end on a note, that's the note I want to end on.
Tis a whale.
Tis a whale.
Tis a whale.
I want to watch this movie for the rest of my life. Like, if I don't have a solid answer for this question, but you know that question is like, if you could only watch one movie for the rest of your life, which one would you watch? Mm-hmm. This would be on the short list for that. Like,
oh, sure. Easily. Why not? I think the things that we brought up, especially me, as far as the things to change or maybe to add or to tweak, are fair. But I don't, in some of our, previous videos, we talk about how it's like the pieces are there, but they aren't put together, like Terminator Salvation. That's not, I don't feel like that here. Like, it's not that the pieces aren't there.
Film, the nitpicks in this film are not about the quality of the film. No. It's just about, like, because like the things that we've mentioned are things you notice on a rewatch because you were not paying attention the first time because the rest of the story is so good.
That's weird. I'm gonna lose sleep over that it seems the majority of people don't actually like this movie, because I will wonder if I am missing something, if it's bad and I just never caught it, because I don't
my guess is people's expectations were off. They thought it would be something that it wasn't.
See, I'm going to call bullshit on that, too, because I remember the trailers for this movie. The trailers include the Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton wagging its tail like a dog. If you went into that movie with educational expectations, you, sir or madam, or neither, are dim. So that's not the movie's fault. That's your fault. Please.
I actually should watch a trailer just to see how it was advertised, because sometimes bad advertising can kill a movie.
Well, I remember it was either a trailer or it was just like an ad for the movie on like TNT or AMC back when TV was a thing. It includes the part where Robin Williams as Theodore Roosevelt screams to scare Larry. Like, again, what are you wanting from this movie? Good
so
Lord.
good.
Anyway, 'tis a whale. I loved it. I can't wait to watch the next one. There will be more, I think, nitpicks or negatives, but that, whatever, you know? Like, this movie is great. It's great. Ugh. All right, bye.